My, it's a good-looking group. I understand what Brian's talking about. Y'all, you get a little different effect standing up here looking out there. It's so good to see y'all here in the house of the Lord, especially Brother Rick. Brother Rick, we've been praying for you, and if you look on the back of that bulletin, me and you are right on the top of the list. We were running a race to see which one of us is going to get here first. I'm so proud to see you and his precious wife, Vicki. We've missed y'all so much, and we're glad y'all have decided to come and be with us today, or were able to be with us today. There's probably 1,000 things that I should say or need to say, and every time I step up here, I just forget everything. Let's see. Brian pretty well handled our announcements. Very good. And we're looking for Vacation Bible School this year. It's 5 o'clock till 8 o'clock, I believe. And we're going to have a wonderful time. And y'all be praying that God will lead us during this time. You guys, we're in a real critical time in our nation. I know the older you get, the more critical you think it is. I remember Brother Brooks, my other father-in-law, he wouldn't turn on TV for a long time, and he wouldn't watch anything except a little sports, is about all, because watching the news just depressed him so much that, and he said it was all just terrible, terrible. Well, I'm the same way. I understand just exactly how he was, and it seems like age does that to you. But we're in a critical time, and we need to expose these young ones to the Lord's Word and give them an opportunity to make a decision for Him. The thing about a Father's Day message is most of the time the people that need to hear the message aren't here. So I'm so proud of y'all that did show up, and if you feel like I'm beating you on top of the head, I'm so sorry. I really don't mean to. But the Word is the Word, and I've been responsible to try to present that to you as your pastor. Samuel Johnson's biographer, his name was Boswell. Samuel Johnson was an English critic, biographer, essayist, poet, lexicographer. He was regarded as one of the greatest figures of the 18th century, life and letters, and Boswell was his biographer. And he often referred to a special day, he said Samuel did in his childhood when his father took him fishing. The day was so fixed in the old man's mind, and he often reflected upon many things that his father had taught him in the course of their fishing experience together. Well, after having heard of that particular excursion so often, it occurred to someone much later to check the journal that Boswell's father kept and determine what had been said about the fishing trip from the parental perspective. So they turned to the date, and the reader found only one sentence that was entered there. It said, "Gone fishing today with my son, a day wasted." In a family with children, a father's main priority becomes in his mind, because I've been one, the provider. And depending on how hard it is to provide and the constant pulling to provide causes a father's focus to be narrowed, sometimes just focused only on that job. A lot of other things that are personal go unattended. Children are for one. All the time I was growing up, I don't remember my dad going to any of my school activities except football. And that was whenever I was in high school. But he would have gone to that whether I was playing or not. Oh, he might have gone to a public schools week. Years ago, we had a deal called Public School Week, and all the kids got their rooms ready and primped them up, and I made little doodads and everything, and they had a program at their auditorium, and everyone came. Daddy went to a couple of those. His main thing in life was providing a living for Mama and the kids. I'm sorry, guys. There was 6 of us, so we ate like a bunch of little hogs. To his kids, his every thought was on work. Thank goodness he was good at it. I know that he loved me because of his effort he displayed to make his family a living and his effort to try to get us to church. Daddy was all business. He was a farmer. But I know he was a Christian because he encouraged us to go to church. I've got to tell you this about my dad. I'll tell it to you in an illustration that I've used before. I'm not sure here. There once was a young boy who in his middle teens took ill. His father was a farmer. And this young boy was put to bed. The doctor was called in, and in his examination of the child, he realized this time on the earth was going to be real short. And the boy somehow knew he wasn't long on the earth, and he asked his father to come in. He wanted to talk with him. The father sat down on his bedside. The boy began to tell the father that Daddy said, when I die, I want you to bury me out by the lot gate. So whenever you go out to the field, you look down and see my grave. You come back in for lunch. You look down and see my grave. You go out after lunch, the same thing, and come in at night. And he said, every time you pass my grave, I want you to say, here lies a boy who never heard his father pray. Well, I guess you've guessed it by now. I never in all my life heard Wilbur Adkins pray. You know, our schools today have a huge responsibility to teach our children everything they need to get along in life. And in my opinion, area schools are there to reinforce the morality being taught in the family, not necessarily to teach a morality. But today there's so little morality being taught in homes. It's hard for schools to reinforce something that's not being taught. To me, this is why everything is so mixed up today. I described the condition of the world like the old Comanche Indian did in the movie Little Big Man. He said the white men don't know where the center of the world is. They're looking for the center of the world, and in the process, they're creating all kinds of destruction. Let me tell you right now, the center of the world is Christ. And to learn of Christ, the world should look no further than the Holy Bible. Fathers, our responsibility are to provide, but our responsibility is to teach. Along with the responsibility of providing, we need to be able to teach these children. Look what the Bible says, Deuteronomy 6, 4 through 7. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord, and thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, with all thy soul, with all thy might. And these words which I command thee this day shall be in thy heart, and thou shalt teach them diligently unto thy children, and thou shalt talk of them when thou sittest in thine house, and when thou walkest by the way, and when thou liest down, and when thou risest up. This passage tells us that we're to teach our kids. And the indication is that if we teach them the way the Bible is indicating, we wouldn't have hardly time enough to provide. We're to teach them when we're sitting in our house. We're to teach them when we're driving in our car. We're to teach them whenever we get up in the morning, when we go to bed at night. Kind of like the Waltons. That's a lot of teaching. The Bible says also that another responsibility besides teaching is we're to train our children. What's the difference between teaching someone and training someone? Training seems to require a physical effort to demonstrate a method that has been taught. Teaching is classroom. Training is apprenticeship. Proverbs 22:6 says, train up a child in the way he should go. That is, train up a child, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. Fathers have a responsibility to train their children. And I've listed provide, even though I've already mentioned provide, but I want you to look at 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 14. Paul was trying to get back to visit the Corinthian church. He said, behold, the third time I am ready to come to you, and I will not be burdensome to you, for I seek not yours but you. For the children ought not to lay up for the parents, but the parents for the children. You know, the natural, healthy course of providing should be from parent to child. It's an indication that parents shouldn't have children so that the children may become another hand to provide work for the parents' need. A lot of times, Daddy got kidded because he had all those boys, and they'd say he raised his own farm hands. People, this is what I'm talking about. The father has the responsibility, according to the book, to provide for his children 1 or 50. That is the biblical way parenting and providing is intended. Fathers have a responsibility not only to train, to provide, but also to nurture. Ephesians chapter 6, verse 4. And ye fathers, provoke not your children to wrath, but bring them up in the nurture and the admonition of the Lord. Teasing is a form of provoking, beloved. I've heard of and seen fathers tease their children to the point of tears. I know of one father who teased his girls so much they hid from him whenever he came home from work. This verse tells fathers to do exactly the opposite of teasing your children. We are told as fathers to nurture our children like God nurtures us. Let me give you an illustration of nurturing. It'll explain the meaning a lot better than I can define it. Small boy was consistently late coming home from school, and his parents warned him that he must be home on time this afternoon. But nevertheless, he arrived later even than he ever did. His mother met him at the door and didn't say anything. His father met him in the living room and didn't say anything. That night at dinner, the boy looked at his plate, and there was a slice of bread and a glass of water. He looked at his father's plate, and it was full. But his father remained silent, didn't say anything. And the boy was just crushed. Father waited for the full impact to sink in, and then quietly he took the boy's plate. He placed it in front of himself. He took his old plate of beef potatoes, put it in front of the boy, and smiled at his son. When that boy grew up to be a man, he said, all my life, I've known what God is like by what Father did that night. Nurture. We are to nurture our children as fathers. Fathers have a responsibility of controlling their children. 1 Timothy chapter 3, verse 4. One that ruleth well his own house, having his children in subjection with all gravity. This passage describes what one must be able to do when holding the office of bishop. But Paul's indicating this to be the way a father should control his own house. Too much control will drive children away. Not enough control makes the child useless to anybody but himself. I like to think of controlling a child like saving the mouth of a horse. You can really control a horse with a Spanish bit. But what's the bit doing to the horse's mouth? I've seen horses' mouths literally bleed from the pressure put on that bit. Old horse trainer would tell you that to use this bit consistently on the horse would make his mouth so tough, soon he wouldn't even feel the bit in his mouth enough to control him. Horse needs to be trained to ride with an easy bit, with a loose rein. Same way with a child. Too much, too harsh discipline drives children away. Fathers, lastly, are supposed to love their children. Titus 2, verse 4. Titus says that they may teach the young women to be sober, to love their husbands, to love their children. That whole passage is wonderful. I urge you to go home and read that, Titus chapter 2. Titus was telling us how the different ages of men and women should act in life. He has suggested that the young women love their children. Then in verse 6, he says the young men likewise. 1 Corinthians 13 says, and now abideth faith, hope, and love. These three. But the greatest of these is love. This love makes the process of controlling children not a job, but an adventure. Hear me. If the love is not there, controlling the child becomes a dreaded chore. God bless you, fathers who are in the harness for your God and family. If there were more of you, this world would be a much, much better place. How can we encourage our world fathers to take their responsibility in the family? When I get to the limits of my ability to do, then the next thing in the arsenal is prayer. It should have been the first thing. If you want to know what to do for fathers, then pray. Fathers, God bless you today, and we honor you. And that's my sermon. God bless you. I want you to stand.